All right, y'all, I want you to get in the comments right now because whether or not Patrick Graham or Antonio Pierce return next season, I want them to know that the nation's got their back. Man, I love Patrick Graham, what he has been able to do for this defense. I love the energy that Antonio Pierce brings. Makes me want to run through a mother effing wall every time that dude talks. So before this video gets going, before you watch it, take a second, take 2 seconds, scroll on down, spam PG, spam AP, because to me, they have done a lot of amazing, amazing things for the Raiders and also Raider Nation. Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Rentz here, host of the Raiders Report. And coming up on today's show, did Patrick Graham and Davante Adams reveal the fact that the Las Vegas Raiders are moving on from this coaching staff? On today's show, I'm going to go through a lot of quotes. I'm going to give you my opinion on a lot of the things that have happened this week. But you guys know what I always say here. Smoke, fire, actions speak louder than words. But I do think that these words that Patrick Graham and Davante Adams said are definitely worth listening to. So let's go here to Patrick Graham, what he had to say this week at the podium. And he was pretty emotional while saying all these things. I told the guys the other day, and I'm not going to get emotional. I promise you that. But I've had the most fun this year coaching this group of players than I have had my whole career, plain and simple. Not taking anything away from the guys I've coached before, but their growth, how they have improved, how they've embraced myself, the coaches, the turmoil that we have faced, and how they laid it out there on the line for us, starting with our leader, Maxx Crosby. When I heard this speech from Patrick Graham, and I remember watching it live, and the entire time I watched it live, and I know I'm not the only Raiders fan that believes this, and if you feel this exact same way, click that like button right now. But when Patrick Graham said that, the tone, the body language, and I know he said he wasn't emotional, but, I mean, come on, man. Like, he was a person. And that's why I love AP and PG. Like, they talk to us like people. I don't want coach speak. I don't like coach speak. That's bullshit. It's wasting my time. Patrick Graham, Antonio Pierce have always told it to us the exact way that you want to hear it. But man, oh man, him saying that, it really truly sounded like a goodbye to me. And I think that he knows potentially what's going to be coming next here for the Las Vegas Raiders. So coming up here on the Raiders Report, the smoke leading up to Patrick Graham's speech. For people who watch this show all the time, for the real ones out there, if you're a real one, give me an RO4L down below. But like, when you follow the timeline here, and then that speech happens, actions speak louder than words, bro. And the actions that have led up to that speech really make me wonder, have the Raiders already told Patrick Graham, this Raiders staff, of what's going to happen in 2024? If you want Patrick Graham to return next season, though, hit that subscribe button, because I'll tell you this right now, I want PG back. This Raiders defense is playing lights out football. It's the first time since 2002, y'all. 2002, the Raiders had a Super Bowl caliber team. You got a Super Bowl caliber defense. If you believe in defense wins championships, then why would you not try to do everything in your power to bring back Patrick Graham next season? What scares me is you bring in the head coach, they're going to bring in a brand new regime, which is why I'm wondering, is that why PG was as upset as what he is? But here's the thing, man. I've always been the biggest supporter of Patrick Graham. This is a video that I did 11 months ago. It was a video 11 months ago because I was so sick and tired of people saying, oh, Patrick Graham stinks. The Raiders defense stinks. No, it doesn't. The defense last season ran by Patrick Graham from weeks 11 to 16 when they were healthy was an outstanding defense. And then a month ago, I made another video. The Raiders need to make sure that they keep Patrick Graham in 2024. When the Raiders did all their hiring cycles back in 2022, I hated McDaniels. Like Dave Ziegler, loved Patrick Graham. Great coach, great human being, but he's a great teacher. And to me, that's something that people just don't talk about enough. And I think that's why the Raiders defense has been as good as what it has been. You have a great coach, you have a great leader, but a great teacher in Patrick Graham, and I really, really want him back next season. If you missed those videos, it's probably because you're not subscribed. Hit that subscribe button. I promise you, we keep you up to date here on the Raiders Report. So coming up here, the smoke leading up to Patrick Graham's speech, because there's been a lot of it. Like, There has been. And I know a lot of people are busy during the holidays. I know a lot of people maybe miss certain things. And I know some people get a little bit wild with us once in a while here on the show. But let's look at this quick timeline here real quick. So on December 31st, the Raiders lose to the Colts. And, a week before that, you beat the Chiefs on Christmas. We're hooting and hollering. AP's the coach. This staff is staying all beautiful, right? Then you lose to Indianapolis in a pretty rough game. The defense had probably their worst game that they've had, minus the Chiefs game, but it was one of the worst games that the Raiders have had defensively. They only gave up 23 points. Defense still played well, but it still wasn't a great game. Then December 31st, also, Harbaugh hires Don Yee. So the Raiders lose to Indianapolis. Harbaugh hires Don Yee, who was very well connected to Tom Brady, very well connected to a bunch of people here in the Raiders organization, very well connected to a lot of Raiders players in this Raiders organization. January 1st rolls around. Michigan beats Alabama. And one of the best college football games that I have ever watched. Michigan down 20-13 in the fourth quarter against Nick Saban. Hell, I remember looking over to my fiance Alex being like, this game's over. This is a Bama game. Nope. Jim Harbaugh outcoached them, got a big-time win in overtime, and you got to be able to pay those dues, man. Like, you really got to be able to pay those dues. January 2nd, Patrick Graham gives his, I'm going to call it a goodbye speech, because that's what it sounded like to me. I'm not going to sit up here and say that that Patrick Graham, I used to call Paul Gunther PG, that Patrick Graham was saying goodbye. That's not what I'm saying. But when you sit down and you listen to the speech, I'm talking man to man here, it sounded like a goodbye speech. It really, truly did to me. And then January 2nd, Davante Adams saying that we want AP. To me, when you think about Colts loss, Harbaugh hires Don Yee, well connected to the Raiders. Michigan beats Bama. PG sits up there and says like a goodbye speech. And then Davante making it very well known that they want Antonio Pierce. Like, I don't know if Davante Adams says what he says and I think actually this happened on January 3rd, but I don't think Davante says that unless there are legit rumblings in that locker room, legit rumblings in that facility, legit rumblings, rumors that the Raiders are going to be moving on this offseason, not because they don't like PG, not because they don't like AP, but because they want Jim Harbaugh. So, like, when I hear all that kind of stuff and I see that speech, I'm like, did they just reveal to us, without actually revealing to us, that the Raiders are going to be moving on from this entire coaching staff in 2024? Coming up, I'll give you the exact quote of what Davante Adams had to say, and then I'm also going to tell you some other very interesting things that I don't think you want to miss. But I do got to give a shout-out to today's sponsor, Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy sports made easy, and I love Prize Picks because Prize Picks to me it's probably my favorite sponsor I've ever had here on the Raiders Report, because when you think about how much this show has grown, and again, if you've been around here since 10K subs, 20K subs, a lot of y'all know that I was a fantasy football guy way back in my day, and the fact that we finally have the #1 daily fantasy sports app out there wanting to sponsor the Raiders Report, I mean, I'm telling you all right now, I could sit up here right now and just say, if you don't try Prize Picks, well, like, you go after yourself, right? Like, that's how much I love Prize Picks, because to me, Prize Picks just solidifies what we have been able to do here on this show. But if you're like, Mitch, why should I get started? Well, if you go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and you use code CLNS, you're going to get a $100 deposit match for those first-time people getting started. And all you got to do is pick 2 or plus players and choose more or less. If my dad can sit down, I shouldn't say my mom. If my dad can sit down and he can put in a lineup in less than 60 seconds, if my fiance Alex is like, hey, can we play Prize Picks before watching a big-time game? I mean, she knows it too. You put down $10, you have a chance to win up to 25 times your money. It's simple, it's easy, and most importantly, to me, the most valuable thing in life is time. If you could take 3 hours of your day, okay, and be 100% occupied for, let's say, $10, but you have a chance to win $250 while also being occupied, I mean, that is literally the best money that you could possibly spend. I mean, I think about some of the times that Alex and I, we go out for dinner, we go out for drinks, we do what we want to do, and you're going to spend a lot more. But there's also some really, really nice nights, and Alex and I have had a lot of awesome dates where we go more or less on a few players that she wants to put some money on, and she's so locked into the football game, she's starting to learn a lot more. I'm telling you right now, if you got a significant other, you got a child, you got somebody that you're like, I really want to learn football with them, or like, I want to teach them the game. You start with Prize Picks. It's a win-win scenario. You're going to win spending time with them. They're going to love it because there's a chance to win some money. Shit, give them the money even if you win it. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Just make sure that you use code CLNS. That way PrizePicks knows that we sent you. All right, coming up here is what Davante Adams had to say about Antonio Pierce. And to me, it's very, very important for Mark Davis to listen to Davante. And yesterday I made a quick video. Chugs was off, so I made a quick, at-home style video around Davante Adams, everything that he said. If you already watched that video, I salute you. But here's one thing that's clear. Davante Adams wants Antonio Pierce. And during the January 3rd press conference, Davante said, me and many of my fellow teammates want Antonio Pierce to be the coach next season. Tay believes AP has done a phenomenal job, and I do think that here's going to be the problem with Mark Davis that he's going to face is he didn't hire Rich Bisaccia when the Raiders were 7-5. They went to the playoffs, and everybody in that locker room wanted Papa Bisaccia back, moved on from him, decided to hire Josh McDaniels. I'm telling you right now, if Mark Davis does not hire Antonio Pierce and decides to hire somebody else, that team, that head coach, better win in year one. It's not a rebuild process because I'm telling you right now, if this coaching staff, ownership, whoever it is, if they ignore Davante Adams again, I think it's going to be bad news. It's going to be bad news. It's going to send a bad message out there to everyone where you traded a first and a second round pick. You made Davante Adams the highest paid wide receiver in the National Football League. All he asked for last offseason was to have a say in who's going to be the next quarterback. Well, guess what? Dave Ziegler has come out and said he didn't want Jimmy Garoppolo. Josh McDaniels said, I don't give an F of what Ziegler says. I don't care what Davante Adams says. I'm going to go with Jimmy Garoppolo because that's what I want. If you put another slap in the face to Davante Adams, anything is possible. So when Davante said this on AP, I hope that the Raiders are listening. It's obvious who I wanted, and he's my vote. I've been vocal about that, and that's basically how the whole locker room feels, and with good reason. He's come in and done a great job. He's continued to win us over. It's not just the comfortable thing. I think having AP here would be good for this organization. He embodies what it means to be a Raider, that mentality, that swag, all the things that he endorses are the things that I believe in. Definitely, I'm rooting for him. And I think everybody watching the show right now understands that, yes, I agree with what Davante said. I think Antonio Pierce has done a phenomenal job. And I don't expect Antonio Pierce to be able to change the Raiders' offense, an offense built by a clown. I'm not going to sit up here and judge him that. To me, I'm gonna judge AP based on his job. He's the defensive-minded coach. Patrick Graham, this Raiders defense was one of the best Raiders defenses in the league. They were probably top 10-ish. Since AP has taken over, they are no doubt top 5. They are a no doubt top 5 by almost every single metric you can look at in the NFL, going up against the Miami Dolphins, the Kansas City Chiefs, good offenses in the league, right? That's on paper. So, I get what Davante is saying. And there has to be a good reason Davante decided to speak up the same day Patrick Graham seemed to say goodbye. That is one of those actions where Patrick Graham on January 2nd basically gives his goodbye speech. Davante Adams the next day is basically saying, hey, I want Antonio Pierce. A few days before that, the whole Jim Harbaugh thing happens. There has to be some rumblings of why all of these things are happening right now. But one of the best parts about the Raiders Report is the interaction with the fans. And one of the best things about this show is tough questions, because when we started the show, I wanted to come up with an idea of a show where it's I don't want to just be up here talking to myself. I see Tony Collins, David, Matthew, Sienna all watching the show live right now, and I appreciate the hell out of that. But I wanted to think of a show where it's me and my buddies hanging out, me and my family having a real-life conversation. And realistically, this question that I'm going to ask you probably is never going to happen. However, though, if you could only keep one, if it came between Antonio Pierce and Patrick Graham, which one would you pick? It's a tough question. It's a really, really tough question. Believe me, I would like to type 12. Hell, I'd type 21. Either way to keep both of these guys. But if you could only keep one, Antonio Pierce as head coach or Patrick Graham as defensive coordinator, what would you do? Type 1 for Antonio Pierce, type 2 for Patrick Graham as defensive coordinator. Now, for those that aren't watching live, you're about to get hit with the YouTube ad break. Scroll on down. Let me know my answer after this ad break. My answer, which may be an unpopular opinion, and I love Antonio Pierce, but here's me being real with you. One of the biggest reasons why I want AP back is because I'm hoping if AP comes back, that means we keep Patrick Graham. The Raiders defense with PG, it's been good for a while. And unfortunately, I think the nation is sleeping on how great of a job Pierce has done, because think about how much money McDaniels spent on the offensive side of the football. Think about how much this organization has ignored the defensive side of the football. And what Patrick Graham did last season was a phenomenal job. He did a great job last season. This year, it's been on a whole nother level. And now with the addition of Antonio Pierce, you went from being great to elite. And that's what being a Super Bowl team is about. Taking a good team to a great team to an elite team. And Patrick Graham took a shitty defense, turned it into a good defense last season, turned it into a great defense this season, and now with Antonio Pierce, it's an elite defense. And that is why I actually believe that keeping Patrick Graham is more important than keeping Antonio Pierce for the Las Vegas Raiders. However, I am hoping that both Antonio Pierce and Patrick Graham are back for 2024.